Okay, turn 50. We'll just do this. So I think the big thing here, I think the thing that I want to most communicate is that the core right here is just the idea that like you don't have to control what happens, you know? We're going to work on our bit here, which is just staying quiet, right? Being the ocean through all the turbulence, you know? And we are going to trust that everybody else gets their stuff done, you know, that we can depend on everybody else to do the work required for the report, do the work required to like learn more about each other, all that kind of stuff. And we're just going to stay quiet, you know, stay calm, keep things from getting heated, right? So having said that, if I had the ability, I don't have the fabric needed for this yet, so I'm not going to go into that. But I am going to just, well, get this appreciate first, but then I'm going to see if we can boost the amount we like each other a bit. Right now, we can start with Anupam, I think. Either Anupam or Kiran. Or rather, sorry, let's do Anupam. So we're just going to do this, try to generate some extra quiet that way, both for us and for her. Add another unit here. In the meantime, I could put together either of these, but I will keep them for now. We should be able to complete this wonder fairly soon, I hope. And then after that, we just keep converting these tiles, and if we can, we will try to have it spread over into the regions adjacent to us, right? Like this tile over here that can spread into Radha's space, this tile over here that can spread down into the responsible area, give Kiran something. Okay, we can start building factories. That's good. This is tricky. I would like to keep this social one, but on the flip side, it probably makes sense just to take 2 work ones, because that way we'll be able to get them done quicker. What have we got here? Oof, toxic. This would be good, but I don't think it's well suited for us. We'll just pick up this for now. We'll see, we might even build a factory at some point, but we don't need to right now, so we will not. Okay, so now we have lost this camp to Kiran, and we could try to get it back, but on the flip side, you know, we don't really have to worry about it, right? Everything there is pretty quiet. So what we'll do is we'll just try to handle our own stuff. Then we can just go here. Here we go. So that's pretty cool. See, we just ended up adding a view just like that. So now over here, let's just take a quick look at the report. We're at 23 views total, which is just a bit short under the 25 needed for this, but our report score is only 350 because the complexity is high. We need a lot more connectors going on around here. Right, there's a lot of disconnected topics. So we'll see if we can do something about that. And we'll just see where these things take us. That did not work out. It's a shame. That did work out. That's good. That worked out too. That's also good. We can do this. Should be able to handle some insecurity quite quickly. Oh, and it even flipped this. It should end up flipping this camp back to us too. Which again, I mean, we didn't need it to, but if it will, then that's nice. Okay, we take this here, I guess. No? Right here. I can't do that right now. So I could build a sanctum, that is one option. But I'm just going to examine the area so that I can use it again next turn if I need to. Okay, 2 quests there like so. Some quests here. Let's just do that. Okay, that's good. That's close but not there. Should do it. Here we go. Keep exploring. Can take this unit out here. Okay, so we're slowly getting fabric from something. It's good. But it doesn't feel like we're getting it fast enough to do some stuff that we would like. One thing that we can do, which works well, is we can start this and then we can see if an inspiration will complete it for us. But I think I would rather just do some research. Let's research the world. With luck, we'll find something that connects the world and Churchill, but it doesn't look like that's the case. But yeah, we can quite happily connect Churchill on India to the UK in the 40s. We'll go with this one. Or to India in the 40s. Get that done, that'll connect both. I don't think that's a tier 5 answer, but at least it's a connector. It's a connector that'll increase our report score. It'll make it easier to follow the report. We've had an extended period of having too many quests, but with any luck we'll be able to get through that fairly quick. That'll give us a boost to quiet that maybe can spread our lotus tiles a little bit more. As you can see right now, we are very consistently getting inspirations though. So while we haven't industrialized, that should help us like get a lot of things done. Okay, so we've got this food bonus from Anupam, that's good. Let's learn about some loneliness. Take this, inspire there, that flips this, gives us that, works on the answer. We can just take this here. I could just build this one day. There's no real reason not to. Or that one even. I would actually like to spread into a new area and flip some tiles that way, but that doesn't look very plausible. I think I'll just do this. It'll be quick. It'll get us some stuff. Similarly over here. Okay, that's good. Just trade here. We'll make a decision on that later. Okay, so we're at 27 views, but we're still way below the required score. Just need to add a lot of connectors. So basically, I could add some views. I could add views on either of those topics, but I'm going to save these facts to use to connect up some views instead. Okay, going into the next turn, you can see Anupam is industrializing a bit more. You can see Kiran has a few. The other seems to be remaining calmer though, so that's useful. We should go and explore these last few tiles. We'll get a unit to do that at some point. Okay, we're still staying a little too active. Right, a little too tense, but hopefully we can get through that quick. Yeah. Okay. did that. That's great. I don't know that I want a devious unit, but we'll just keep it for now. Take this, spire there, great stuff, took care of that. Now we're down to 4 active ones. And we do have quiet here, it's just we don't quite have enough yet. Okay, let's try taking it. Let's just try putting down some sanctums, I guess. Do it here, and then we can spread it into the city, and then if we spread it into the city, it'll spread to the camps. Okay, let's just add some facts while we can. Okay, still no connectors. Could add this view, but I don't think it's high enough. Yeah, need to have some like focused views. So again, we'll just keep researching, add a bunch of facts. We'll see where things go. Anupam is industrializing a little rapidly, it looks like, so that might be a bit of a problem. We should try to get some builders or some such going. They'll help us clean up tiles a little bit and just add some extra quiet. The biggest thing is we do just need to finish off these quests, but we'll see. That's non-trivial even with all these inspirations. The wonder should finish quickly. It's like it's done even. So now we're not that far away. Yep. Okay. So here we do just kind of want to spread, but we also could just use this here. I think that's probably the best idea. Move this down here. Right, now we're down to 1 active quest. And that one's going to get finished pretty soon anyway. But if we can just finish it off, which we can't, we'll take this unit out here. Bring this up. Trade here. Okay. So I can support this, but that's going to be done soon anyway. I can add another appreciate. I could try to be friendlier with people, or I could go for some facts. I mean, I know I said all of that stuff about like trusting in other people and staying quiet, but I do really just want to put some more connectors down. And I would like some fabric so that I could start some more powerful things, but I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this anyway. Oh, it needs... Okay, so this just needs like... This doesn't need much. Okay, let's just go here though. Let's hope for the best. And we'll do it again. Okay, still no connectors. Oh, those were some fun facts. Those were Gandhi telling off young women in Kolkata for doing things like wearing makeup. And then those young women responded quite courteously to him, it must be said, but quite well, telling him that if the problem is young women attracting Romeos through their makeup and whatnot, the problem is that there are too many Romeos for each Juliet, which I quite appreciated. And then his answer was absurdly patronizing and lacking in any kind of introspection, as he would do. But Well done to well done by those students of the time. Well done not to be cowed by Gandhi, but to say what you feel and say what is correct. Okay, so we'll just get these in. You can see this is spreading quite rapidly, but so now what I should be looking to do is spread it down into the other players. I should also just make sure that I'm keeping enough favor in that region so that I can keep it, because I imagine that I am significantly quieter than Anupam, and so if I lose the region, then it's quite likely that there's going to be a lot more pollution there. Right, so over here what we need is to add a second quiet tile. Just go here and build a sanctum. It's dangerous, but I think we'll explore there to try to get some quiet that way. While we're here, I would just like to research the world. I could meditate with those, it's true, but I would rather get the I would rather get the facts, try to get some connectors. Okay. Let's see what happens on the next turn. But I should definitely add some more favor in this region and think about spreading out into the ridge or something if I can. Okay, so if it's turn 56, we should have at least raised our grade once by now, but that's okay. I trust in these other players to do it, especially look at how Anupam seems to be developing. Let's go take a quick look at her space when we can. Okay, just waiting for our turn to start. Looks like some stuff has come up. Anupam keeps wanting to share facts with us while we just keep wanting to hang out, and it does not work well, but this one did. This one did. Gained a lot of like. Pick this up somehow. Now we're in a new campaign, which is unfortunate. That's the result of this miscommunication. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, well, on the plus side, this should give us a lot more favor in this area. We really are only able to hold on to this area now because Anupam is in control of so much already. We can take this here, knock that one out, take this here, hopefully, knock that one out. Nope, not even close. Okay, well, let's bring this unit over here where it might be of some use. What have we got here? 2 birds. Okay, so now we have 3 quests to complete a tier 5 wonder. Let's just do that. I thought we had done this, but that's okay. Oh, although we are generating motivation here, do I want to just do this? We seem to have a lot of motivation already, though. Oh, and then, damn, these. Oh, when we lost control of these regions, Anupam ended up industrializing them. What a shame. What a shame. Okay, we'll just go with this anyway. See, now they're adding a bunch of views, which is great, but we need to add some connectors, because the views are all well and good, but the problem is right now it's just our report is just too disconnected. We need to tie things together a bit. We'll try to complete this wonder as soon as possible, and then once we've done that, we'll see where we go. Now that we've started it, we might be able to use an inspiration to complete it. So that would be convenient. Let's see how this conversation ends up once the turn begins. It's nice. That's useful. Great. This will add some more quiet, so that's great. And we should be able to finish this quickly. We will take the opportunity to learn about Radha a bit. Worked out nicely. Just add a couple here. We have to think about this one. I think I'll disband it. I think I'll disband this one too. Okay. Here. I could try to just use this unit militarily, but I'm not going to do that. '67 is close, but not quite. Good to know that there's no industry there. What have we got here? We've got Churchill in 22, without a seat, without a party, and without an appendix. This is always Churchill's problem. You've got to remember he was an aristocrat. He came from an aristocratic family. And he always viewed the working class as socialists, and the working class often viewed him as antithetical to themselves. So that's how he lost his seat in 23. In 24, this was after he flipped from being a liberal to a Tory. The Liberal Party, of course, was soon to collapse under the rising Labour Party, which kind of ate their lunch. And Winston flipped to the Tory party. This was his second flip, if I remember. He started with the Tories, following in his father's footsteps, went to the Liberals when they were on the rise under H.H. Asquith. And now he's a Tory again. He lost this election as well. Again, because he was so quick to paint those opposed to him as socialists, right? This is what got him in trouble in 45 as well, on a much bigger stage. But in general, he just did not have the trust of the working people in the 20s, because they viewed him as fundamentally opposed to their beliefs. Churchill was very much a free market capitalist. He believed, to the extent that he believed, that it was no business of the government to do charity, to help people have a better life. He felt that that was actually the work of capitalist philanthropists, not of the government at all. And opposed to worker rights in general. He had this strong view that socialism was practically anarchy, and he was, of course, strictly opposed to anarchy. And it did not hold him in good stead with people. It caused him a lot of issues over his career. Issues that he brought upon himself, of course, so how much are you going to sympathize? Now over here, what we have to do is find what ideally we just bring this to, let's say here, inspire here. Doesn't quite do it. I think I've been spreading my inspirations, but that's how it goes. Okay, good. So that finished that. We added some like with Anupam. We completed this wonder through the inspirations instead. I have enough currency right now, and I'm trying to stick to the quiet economy, so I'm not going to add either of those. Can do this. We should see if we want to just use this. I'd rather not. Radha has added a connector, and you can see we have 40 views, but our score is only 100. That's just because it lacks connections. Over here we have Churchill getting whipped by a suffragette. She broke through the cordon of the police, shouting frantically and flourishing a dog whip. In a flash, she had gripped Mr. Churchill's coat with one hand, and with the other she brought the whip down on his head. He turned immediately and without hesitation seized the woman. The words, "Take that, you brute," could be heard. Before the woman could make a further effort, Mr. Churchill had wrenched the whip from her grasp. She was promptly hurried outside the station and kept there until Mr. Churchill had left. She declined to give her name, but it was stated that she is Miss Theresa Garnett of Leeds. I'd be proud if I had a grandmother or great-grandmother who whipped Winston Churchill on the street. This is the other fun thing. Indeed, it was most provoking to anyone who cared about the style and form of his speech to be assailed by the continued, calculated, shrill interruptions. Just as you were reaching the most moving part of your peroration or the most intricate point in your argument when things were going well and the audience was gripped, a high-pitched voice would ring out, "What about the women? When are you going to give women the vote?" and so on. No sooner was one interrupter removed than another in a different part of the hall took up the task. Great stuff. After a count, a suffragette seized his arm and cried, "It is the women who have done this, Mr. Churchill. Now you will understand that we must have our vote." And of course, we just talked about Churchill's failures in 22, how he lost election after election. Part of that is suffrage, I guess, but not just suffrage, but the expansion of franchise as a whole. As the franchise was expanded to more and more of the populace of the United Kingdom, it was harder and harder for Churchill to keep traction. But anyway, we are losing favor in these regions quite rapidly. Kieran seems to have made pretty large inroads. So again, probably to the good, right? We've built this oasis. If Kieran can get some use out of it, that is excellent. And again, right now, we seem to be struggling with staying quiet. We just have a lot going on. Okay, let's start here, I guess. I did that view onto Gore. Don't know if we succeeded, but let's see what we do next. Sure, let's just do this. Great, that's 2 quests out. Yeah, I guess we'll take care of that one. Over here, we'll just take a look at what's going on with Anupam. Not that it really matters, I just want to know. Let's do this. We'll try talking with Anupam a bit too. Just learn more about her. And sending that devious unit over there, that'll help too. Over here, we could just build a wonder. But I think we will... Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get this going. Should have probably built it on what was already a Lotus tile, but that's okay. We've got time on this. So far, so good. I would like to be quiet, but that's okay. We'll get to that in due time, in due course. There's no rush on any of this. We're only at turn 60. Our report is going much worse than expected. Much worse than we would like. But if we can just get some connections down, just build some facts, we should be able to turn that around fairly quickly. We have a lot of views in the report already, so really it's just a question of can we put together enough connections. Besides that, let's try to flip a few more of these tiles. Once these traders expire, I'm going to go for some civilians or builders and use them to just clean up these tiles a little bit more. Even with all of this, these lotuses are spreading. I'm just going to span that, span that. Oh, I actually did need to use that, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. Do this. If we got these all there, all here. Okay. Let's move this over here. Same with this. Yeah, let's just add some more facts, because you see we're still at 43 views, but only 350 of the score. It's quite low. Over here, what we'll do is we'll build a civilian. Sure, let's just try to get that done quicker. Yeah, we are way below what we need to be here. We're building the connections, but it looks like it's just a lot of topics. And you could also use people adding a few more views of their own too, but we have lots of views, we just don't have any connections. And I think most of the views that we have are fairly low value views. Just views on very easy topics. So yeah, let's see what happens on the next one. So on the topic of Churchill's aristocratic background, his father was actually in India, and while in India he annexed Burma, which ended up working out quite badly for him. It was quite unpopular with the British government that he did so. And then Churchill's mother was one of those daughters of American millionaires that you saw. People very much a shifting of the guard to the US from the British aristocracy. With the money that came with that, you would get these rich American capitalists who wanted entry into polite society, and they would get that by marrying their daughters to members of the English nobility. Over here we have Walking with Destiny. This is his famous speech in 1940. This is him being laughed at over his resigning his cabinet position so that he could defend Antwerp. And this is 10 Days Found, which is him giving himself credit for saving Antwerp, for the defense of Antwerp, giving people time in Dunkirk. Is he right to do so? Yeah, I guess probably. Like, I'm not going to quibble with it too much, but it's very much a childish thing to do. That very much a childish thing that he did, running over to heroically defend a town that was doomed to lose anyway. But anyway, so that was the beginning of World War I for him. He had started as First Lord of the Sea. I think that's what the position is called. Resigned that to go defend Antwerp again, play the hero, and it's more notable though for his proposal to try to land a naval invasion through Gallipoli. His idea was that he would send the boats in through Gallipoli, and that would knock the Ottoman Empire right out of the war. And that, of course, was predicated on, or that was founded on, in racism. Oh, good. So we did this. That's done something. He did kind of assume that the Turkish Empire, being Eastern, had no courage. Right? He was very much convinced that there were racial differences between that there were strong racial differences between different countries, and you could predict their behavior through those racial differences, and that some races were built for war, whereas others were unsuited for war. This you see a lot in his writing on India too, where he thought that many Indian races just were not suitable for fighting. And this, while is of course naturally false on the face of it and rather ridiculous, right? I don't really need to go into why that's such an idiotic thing to think. But I do also want to point out that this has lingered in the Indian imagination for a long time. I do think that there are many Indians who feel very ambivalent towards the legacy of Gandhi because they feel it was not masculine to gain independence through nonviolence, which is something that groups like the RSS appeal to, right? These Hindutva groups appeal strongly to masculinity in the way right-wing groups tend to do, right? In the way that you can see the Republican Party do right now. And you see this a lot in Bengal in particular, which is a race that was much maligned during the time of the British. They were considered basically petty bureaucrats and unsuited for the rigors of war, right? And again, absolutely ridiculous on the face of it. There's no basis for this kind of bigotry, and bigotry is intrinsically ridiculous. But I also think this is a large part of why Subhash Chandra Bose is such a big deal in Bengal. He is one of a couple of very notable freedom fighters from the state. It was a very important state during the time of the Raj. Tagore is, of course, very well known. Tagore's writings were fundamental, but Tagore was also a little bit before the independence movement really took off. And while Subhash Chandra Bose was in the middle of it. And the other thing is that there's a romanticism about the INA. The INA was the Indian National Army. It was a military force founded during World War II, comprised mostly of Indian POWs. They had a very ill-fated invasion of India during the war, where they were crushed by the Indian Army quite brutally. But then what came off that was after the war had finished, there was a trial held for a number of the officers, and this ended up becoming very much a cause célèbre across the country. Nehru himself defended these officers, trying to appropriate some of the popularity that they saw, and there were also mutinies across India in support of them, especially once they were sentenced to death. The RIN mutiny in particular definitely hastened British withdrawal from India, but the withdrawal was irresponsible, to say the least. Right, and that was made harder by the fact that the Viceroy at the time, Lord Mountbatten, was indisputably an idiot. Right, also one of Churchill's proteges. Churchill was a big fan of him because of how handsome he was. And to give Mountbatten credit, he was fairly good looking in the British aristocratic way. Right, which comes with its own caveats and all of that, but I'm not really here to judge the personal beauty of Lord Mountbatten. the more important thing is that politically his handsomeness was seen as an asset because it was thought that he could be the new Lawrence of Arabia, another very popular figure in the British imagination. The difference is that Lawrence of Arabia is much more intelligent than Mountbatten, as are most people. And as a result of that, see over here, we'll just try to share some facts. Yep, serves me right. I never try to share facts, and one time I tried to share facts, it's a mismatch. But it's just wholly unsuited for the rigors of Indian politics at the time, right? Which was filled with a series of very capable players. Even if Gandhi himself was fairly old and not as engaged as he was in his youth, Nehru was a very sharp player. Jinnah was a very sharp player, and Mountbatten himself was not only unsuited to this, but in addition, it didn't seem like he particularly worried about the consequences of his actions. 1921. This is the key. This is one of the keys to Gandhi's early success, right in the 20s, where the thing about being nonviolent was that it left it. There were a number of British who are even quoted as viewing him as their man, because they felt much better that he was the focal point of Indian discontent than a more militant group, and especially better him than the communists, right? As was the case with all history of this time, the specter of communism loomed large over the popular imagination. For the British, of course, the other big thing in popular imagination was the revolt of 1857. Right, there's the siege of Kanpur is something that the British never fully got over for the rest of their time in India. That was 1857, right? The revolt of 1857. But you'll read references to it pretty much up till the day that Indian independence came up. Right, because the British were always a minority and they were dependent on an army that was heavily Indian. Right? In Jallianwala Bagh, for instance, there were only, I think, 3 white officers, and the rest of the army was entirely Indian. But it is worth noting that Indian at the time did not quite have the impact that it does now. Right, when you read interviews of the people at Jallianwala Bagh, of the soldiers, they were from a Gurkha regiment, I think. I think there were 2 regiments there, of which one was a Gurkha regiment, and that regiment speaks about how they were happy to shoot plains people, because they did fundamentally view themselves as a different people entirely, seeing as they came from the mountain region and not the plains. But anyway, so I think the biggest thing that the independence movement did, rather than any structural changes per se, was they helped create this idea of a common Indian identity. So that way, when it came to things like the RIN mutiny, for instance, there was a shared belief in what it meant to be an Indian. Right? So the army, pretty much that there was this shared belief in being Indian, and that once that came in, it did feel like independence was something of an inevitability. Yeah. Okay, good. So now we can put in some connectors. This is India in the 1910s to India in the 1920s. Okay, we'll just do this. Unfortunately, that's it. We have a lot of facts here from the 20s, and we could put together a fact on non-cooperation quite easily, but we're just going to keep trying to add connectors. But of course, with all of that came the splitting of the Indian identity into Muslim and Hindu, which had been around since the beginning of Indian politics. If you read cases from before Gandhi came on the scene, you'll see various Hindu institutions make a point of going and ringing temple bells outside of mosques. You'll see cases of Muslims killing cows in front of temples. You'll see deliberate provocations on both sides, right? There's quite a long history here that I don't think it's easy to fully appreciate from such a remove. But by the time of the 1937 elections, and especially after the 37 elections and the landslide victory for the Congress, you did see people asking, you saw the question change from can we get independence to what is the country going to look like after independence. And so you saw both the Muslim League and the RSS, their memberships swelled pretty much in lockstep with each other, and in response to the Congress's dominance, because both of them were trying to find a tack that would give them some popular support. Especially with the League, it seems quite clear that it's not them pushing for a partition as much as them succeeding because they adopted partition. And they only looked towards partition because they were desperate for something to help them gain political traction after the landslide victory of the Congress in 37. And then, of course, both of these parties were helped significantly by the outbreak of the war and the Congress being thrown in jail as a result. And then they formed the coalition government between the two of them, right? And that gave them a lot more of a foundation that they then used. Oh no, so somebody already did put that in. Okay, well, we can just connect it up. But that gave them a foundation which they were able to use in the elections right up at independence, and which helped the League in particular argue for partition. Which, how seriously they wanted that, I'm not sure. But the British were certainly hoping for partition because they were worried about Nehru's socialism. And they were worried that India would turn towards the Second World after independence. And again, you can just see how much the specter of communism animates the politics of the time. Oof, so we have lost this region. That is interesting. And it kind of works towards our favor, actually, having lost this region. If Anupam is going to take this region, then now she's going to get a bunch of inspirations herself, and she can hopefully use those to stay to counterbalance her heavy industrialism in her core region. Meanwhile, what should we do next? I'm pretty happy about losing this region, but I think we might want to spread downwards. Let's see. We definitely want to just keep building our relationship with people. We will try this a couple times, and that was huge. So yeah, maybe we'll just develop our relationship with Radha a bit. And the nice thing is, should we do this ourselves, that also helps Radha find quiet herself, right? If our friendship with her will give us quiet, of course, but it will also help her get some quiet for her citizens. So yeah, what we're going to do now is we're just going to try to spread these lotus tiles downwards. We don't have a... Oh, this is a pretty great place to start, I think. And besides that, these can pray here. Let me just see if I can complete a quest somewhere. Yeah, let's just do that. Oh, mistake. Okay. And over here we will just build a sanctum now. Build another civilian. Add this connector. There we go. See, so these connectors are coming in. What have we got here? Got another thing from Saeed. That is the main intellectual issue raised by Orientalism. Can one divide human reality, as indeed human reality seems to be genuinely divided, into cleanly different cultures, histories, traditions, societies, even races, and survive the consequences humanly? It's a thing I think it's worth thinking about if you haven't been thinking about this stuff, right? We do pretend to these very clean differences, and they fall apart on the most simple of examinations, of course. But in addition to that, like, what does it do to an individual if you're busy categorizing people by race and whatnot? If you're so busy breaking people up into all of these simplistic divisions, then what does that do to you as an individual, that you're starting to see people as these loose connections of traits, and of very rigid traits at that? It's not good for an individual either. And you see that a lot with the colonial period, right? Which is, of course, what Saeed was talking about too. The suicide rate of British people in the colonies was absurd, right? Because it's so dehumanizing. It's such a dehumanizing experience. It's such a tiny group of people because they would only interact with other British people. And it's just hard on your soul if you're constantly finding ways to dehumanize other people. And yeah, I mean, it is just... Obviously, the most of the damage done by colonialism falls on the people who were colonized, right? But it's not... And obviously, being dehumanized is also a very difficult weight to carry, right? It's something that's very difficult to get past. But having said that, but we can say that and simultaneously say that it did a lot of damage to the colonizers as well. These are not mutually contradictory, right? And the fact that it did so much damage to the colonizers as well is another strong argument against it. The fact that it was inhuman to the people colonized is sufficient argument against it. But that doesn't keep the fact that it did like severe spiritual harm to the colonizers as well. That is also a reality. And we see this with a lot of people, right? We see this with a lot of the people we know, where their politics are so consumed by hate that it feels like the individual themselves is lost to hate, right? They're not complicated. They're often... I mean, of course, doesn't do to dehumanize here either, but it does feel like you just have less space to be an individual if you are so consumed by hate. One of the things this game is trying to say is that as you industrialize yourself, as you push yourself further and further to a goal, you lose more and more of yourself. You lose a lot of the quirks that make you individual and that make you sustainable. And we can see this in people whose politics are filled with hate, right? That there is just less to them. There's less thought, there's less idiosyncrasy. They're just less interesting people. Oh, excellent. I will take over that place. Yes, we'll go this way. Oh, that was a mistake, but that's okay. No big deal. I had thought that it would help us develop our relationship, but instead it gave us a wonder to make. But that's not a big deal. I can just uh, try to finish off a wonder. Yeah. And I mean, you see this also when you're like consumed by work, right? There are people who just have nothing to do but talk about work, nothing they can talk to you about that isn't their work. And I mean, it's less than ideal, I think. I think that's the way I like to look at it. That like we all make our choices, and you can spend your entire life judging the choices of others, and then you've got no time to put into anything productive. But if if you do industrialize yourself so heavily that it is just work and how can you work more and more efficiently, essentially hustle culture, right? We see this with hustle culture people as well, that they're just boring, that there's just nothing to engage with as an individual besides the grind, and the grind is not interesting. The grind is trite. But anyway, it's a lot for not that complicated a thought. So one of the things these lotus tiles do, by the way, is that they will destroy improvements on the tile. So we see the wonders that we build kind of keep disappearing as these lotus tiles spread. And of course, later on you can build on them if you want. But I don't need to build on them. I can just leave them undeveloped, trust in the inspirations to carry me through the stuff I need to get done, and just try to keep spreading it, right? So we are running up against this little pile of pollution right here. Oh, cool. Let's do that too. Damn it. And you can see this is spreading here. So what we want to do is create a bulwark here to kind of check its spread and hopefully to contain it. Okay, well, we can just put a couple of inspirations here, get that out of the way. Got a couple of inspirations there already, so yeah, let's just call this. Move this here, inspire. Bing, bang, boom. This seems caught up in something, but that's okay, I'll leave it to it. Add another view onto core. That's over there. I'll trust in things to work out there. It's quite a bit further down, so I'm just going to try to expand this quiet zone as quickly as I can. Let's go here. Over here, we'll just take this down here. That's fun. Okay, great. Seem to have added a whole set of quests, so that's a problem. I probably need to just complete a wonder outright. What have we got here? It's just some gossip from the year 1874. Premature, the Times bought it. The head of its birth notices it reported on the 30th November at Blenheim Palace the Lady Randolph Churchill prematurely of a son. But no one believed it, not the patrician friends of the family, or even the yeomen of Woodstock, who the Oxford Times reported rang a merry peal on the church bells in honor of the event. Winston was full term. It's generally believed that sometime the previous February, during the maddening negotiations over the marriage settlement, Jenny had eluded her mother, divested herself of the incredible layers of clothing then worn by young ladies, and received Randolph's seed. Indeed, it was thought that the Duke and Duchess had known Jenny was pregnant at the time of the wedding. That's why they had boycotted it. Sly allusions to the circumstances of his birth followed Winston all his life. He enjoyed them. He would reply, "Although present on the occasion, I have no clear recollection of the events leading up to it." Yeah, I mean, it's a good final line. He may have been premature, it would have been just like him, he never could wait his turn. And I do really respect Churchill making a joke of it. It was one of his big strengths, right? That he had a sense of humor. I think no matter what you put at his team, what faults you lay at him, and there are many, many, many faults that you can lay on Churchill's feet, did have a sense of humor that did come through every now and again. And I do think it's also worth noting there that the account of that presumes that Jenny is the one who seduced Lord Randolph Churchill and not the other way around, which I think is, of course, in part the sexual politics of the time, but also I think in part that Jenny was very widely understood to be significantly more intelligent than Randolph Churchill, to the point where I am shocked personally that nobody has yet made a movie on Jenny Churchill, because her salon and her affairs were instrumental in the political success of both Randolph Churchill, who admittedly had a sharp limit to his political success because of his own mistakes and his own shady dealings, but also in the early politics of their son, where Winston got a lot of his early commissions only through the intervention of his mother. And there's a very charming story about them running into each other, I think in Egypt, where she had twisted a certain. I feel like it must have been a general, but maybe not. And she had, one of her many admirers happened to be there at the time, and he makes a point of letting them sail up and down the Nile together. She was a very colorful woman, Jenny Churchill. Very free-spirited, very independent, and that was also the way that the American woman was seen at the time, as intelligent and independent and full of spirit, in contrast with their European contemporaries. Right, how true that stereotype was, again, I have no way of knowing, and I suspect it, as with all stereotypes, to be massively overstated. But that is what the popular imagination was, and Jenny Churchill certainly lived up to that, to the stereotype in full. Of course, it's also worth noting that these stereotypes were built off of very specific sections of society. Right? They weren't concerned with let's say the farmer woman of Kansas or something. They were talking about New York high society. They were talking about people who had enough money to be heard. So Tagore with India in the Tens or the world in the Tens. Let's just see which are connected where. India in the Tens. Tagore is already connected with the world in the Tens. So if we connect Tagore to India in the Tens, then that'll connect the whole thing. Cool. So we will just add this. That I would have liked to add some points on Tagore myself, but no big deal. The whole point of this playthrough is that you can't get all the stuff you want, you just do what you need to do to keep the game running. Now again, note that it is turn 72 and we have yet to see any of the global pollution events. In our previous playtest, by turn 78 itself, the game had become unbearably toxic. And I think if you look at the contrast between that game and this one, you'll see that the other players, even while there are these big pollution splotches in the responsible biome and in Anupam's biome over here, it's nowhere near to the extent that it was in our previous game, where just the majority of all three of those regions, and I think our region as well, was heavily polluted, right? By doing all of this work to like create a big quiet space here and to develop the friendship with the other players, which in turn adds quiet to all of our citizens, we're able to tamp down the effects here. This is the thing, right? That a thing that this game asks you to consider is whether you need growth, right? Because capitalism is built on the idea of unceasing growth for the sake of growth, right? That you must always get greater returns in the future than you have in the present. And that abstracts away the cost of it. Cool. Let's see what this does. Right? As the saying goes, it's impossible to have infinite wealth. It's impossible to have infinite growth in a finite world. Right? And when you see people push for it, you can always, if you scratch it a little bit, if you go a little more than surface deep, you will always find the thing that has been abstracted away, the point at which the place where the cost has been abstracted away, right? The thing that has the dust that's been swept under the rug, as it were. So here the idea is that we stand in this game as the position of not needing to grow. And simply by doing that, we make it easier for everybody else to check their growth as well. Now, having said that, if we were very capable of weighing all of the competing interests, we might have been able to grow ourselves. We might have been able to add favor in some of these other camps and use our citizens' quiet to flip a bunch of them into lotuses too. But we were not. We just weren't that good. But it looks like we didn't have to be, right? That's another key point here, that you don't have to be that kind of effective. You don't have to be playing it in an optimal fashion. One of the people who played this game once said that she found it a great starting point with 4X games as a whole, simply because you can rely on the other players to do things that you can't. You're not in competition with them. Their success is your success, right? We're talking a lot about how they're polluting a bunch, but at the same time, we are reliant on their industrialization to fill up the report, right? It's a lot of trust, right? And tempered trust, right? We would have filled out the report in a different way, I imagine. We would have made sure that we put in fewer topics and more connectors had we taken the lead role on that. But we're managing. It's turn 74 and things are still stable, right? Are they going to remain stable? No, I think it looks like we are not quite, we are less than sustainable at the moment. I think that's pretty undoubtable. But the fact that we're here right now and not in the state we were last game, where by this point we were already pretty clearly going to watch the world fall apart, it's a big difference. Okay, that's a big campaign. It's fine. Sure. I can just do this again. Build this engineer. Build this and see, we're already a C, right? We are rapidly increasing because as the other people add more facts themselves, they are better able to add connectors too. So we are at 82 views, which is quite a lot. You'll find when you lead, you'll find often that if you're trying to lead on this, you're going to struggle to get enough views even if you have enough score. But here the complexity factor is still high, so we're still we're losing a lot of points on the report just because it's hard to follow because there are so many unconnected groups. But at the same time, you can see that that the pivot has been made from the other players, where now that there are a bunch of views down, they're busy connecting it up while we are still just kind of going along with the flow. So anyway, that was turn 75. That was first 75 turns of the game. We are going to come back after this with turn 75 through 100. We'll see if we can get that A. We'll see if we can make it all the way there without climate collapse. Let's see where it goes.